It's Listen In with KNN, the sports sound of the district. Today, we welcome a former star of the gridiron and the son of a living legend. After his college days at the University of Pittsburgh, he was drafted by the Houston Oilers in the 6th round of the 1996 NFL Draft. Over his career, he was also a member of the Oakland Raiders, the Toronto Argonauts of the CFL, and Omaha Nighthawks of the former UFL. And he is the son of Pro Football Hall of Fame running back Tony Dorsett. It's Anthony Dorsett, and he joins this live stream broadcast of Listen In with KNN right now with your host, Kelsey Nicole Nelson. It's Listen In with KNN, the sports sound of the district. We bring you the biggest guests, great analysis, and the hottest sports stories in the nation's capital and beyond. And we bring it to you live. Welcome to this live stream broadcast of Listen In with KNN. Here's your host, Kelsey Nicole Nelson.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of Listen In with KNN, presented right here on our home station, Fox Sports Radio, 96.9 FM and 1340 AM. With me, your host, Kelsey Nicole Nelson. I am so excited to be back. I know we've been on a brief hiatus, right? But we're excited to bring back the live stream version of the show. So I went big. I went bold. I decided to bring in someone from the NFL ranks who knows the game very well. Look, you guys are already pouring in, listening, and supporting. It's going to be a great show. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on my very special guest. He is none other than Anthony Dorsett Jr., an NFL veteran, an on-air sports host, and also a fitness expert. So basically, he's a man who can do all, and he's going to join me. We're going to talk the latest and greatest in football, his career, what's new, and guess what? You guys can also tune in, ask questions, please. We'll make sure he answers them, and we'll be on here for about an hour. So thanks so much for joining. So without further ado, let me welcome on Anthony Dorsett Jr. Anthony, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I really appreciate you joining us from the wonderful Dallas area. Excited. Can you bring some warm weather to DC? We're freezing here. We just had snow, Anthony.
Yo, trust me, it is cold here too. It's been in the 30s, but today was a good day. It actually warmed up. It got into the 50s a little bit today, but it's been pretty cold here, except no snow. Fortunately, no snow.
I will take 50s over the snow. Like, it's wet, it's muddy here. And Anthony, people can't drive in the DMV area. I'm sorry. I just had to put it out there.
Trust me, it's like that down here too. If it rains in Dallas, they can't drive down here in the rain.
It's just over. It's done. And again, I know there's a lot been going on with 2020. I know earlier you were with your son getting a haircut. First off, how's the little one?
He's doing good. He's running. I thought I just heard his footsteps. That's why I turned around. But he's running around the house right now playing some video games. And my mother just snuck in town today this afternoon, so they're in there hanging out a little bit.
Oh, I love that. Like, tell them if they want to come on and say hi, they are more than free and welcome to. It's a party here on Listen In with KNN. And I know it's probably been a lot, right? Trying to raise a son in the midst of COVID and 2020 and all that's been. What was that process like for you?
Homeschooling is, that was something that I definitely thought that I would never have an experience in, to the extent that we've actually had to do it. But it's been really cool. I enjoyed the simplicity of everything, and honestly, being able to spend that time with my kid has been a benefit to us, I think, as far as with how the relationship goes. But It's been a learning process, just like it has been for everybody. I'm sure either if you have a kid or if you don't have a kid through the pandemic.
Yeah, and look, it's a lot that was happening, but especially to raise a little one that I'm sure is probably getting like tired in the house, right? Daddy, I want to go outside and do everything else. You're like, no, we have to stay safe. I heard you tell them earlier to keep on his mask, right?
Yeah, well, fortunately for us, I live close to a school, so when everything first started off, we were still able to get outside. It was still warm, hot here in Texas, and then now, through the pandemic, we've been able to my son. He's pretty fortunate. He has a basketball court in the backyard. He got his soccer goals back there. His bike. He got a trampoline. So the backyard has been pretty cool so far since everything started.
Yeah, he's the king of the backyard. I'm sure he'll say that, right?
King of the house. He's the king of the house.
I like that, king of the house. And as we're talking about your son, I mean, just so many questions I could ask you, but let's talk about Black fatherhood. I mean, what's it been like for you raising a son in the midst of all that's been this year, right? We know what happened with the death of George Floyd and the conversations we're continuing to have. What's that been like, and what are you trying to teach him that you hope he takes from you and learns from this current time and moment in history?
Well, the thing about George Floyd's situation is, that brought light to what was actually going on as far as with the police brutality, unfair treatment, and just a number of other things that we as minorities have been facing for years. But to be honest with you, way before George Floyd, of course, being just a Black man and a Black father and raising a young Black man, there's certain things that come into effect way before that situation has ever happened. Fortunately now, my son is he's young, but he recognizes what's going on. He understands, the climate from the pandemic to the election to everything else like that. So it has definitely been a situation that you got to maneuver, and at the same time you have to be strategic in how you teach, because he's only 6.
Right.
So you don't want to scare him right now, but you got to be honest and you got to be truthful.
Yeah, and taking us back to, we kind of know your dad kind of well, Anthony. I mean, take me back to your childhood. What were those lessons like from your father, even when you were growing up?
It was, for me, it was one of those type of situations where, of course, I split time between my mother and my father.
Right.
And they both had to do some raising, at different times and everything. My dad was always the one of the things that he said that rings so true in all aspects of life is, small things make big things happen. And so you can take that into your personal life or to your professional life or, anywhere with that. And that's been one of the largest and one of the most important lessons that I got from him. But of course, throughout the years, there's always been moments and times where, like a certain word or a certain jewel is dropped on you at the right precise moment. So, it's been great to have someone with his knowledge and just his experience in my corner.
Yeah, I mean, always good lessons that you can learn. And obviously now your offspring, right, can take those as well. And we love to see that cycle continue. And as we're talking about your family, born and bred in Pennsylvania, right? And you are a University of Pittsburgh, a graduate degree in communications. Let's talk college, because look, we were all watching you in college, Anthony. That's no surprise or anything. But let's talk about playing football at Pitt, right? The legacy that was there for you. What was that process like?
Prior to going to Pitt, I really didn't. I think I knew anywhere I went to school, just being me, there was going to be some pressure because of my dad and everything else like that. But I guess I knew who he was as a football player, but really didn't understand the legend that he was as a football player until I got to the University of Pittsburgh. Growing up, just watching him play, of course, being a part of that from basically his first college game all the way through his NFL career. You just get caught up in just being with your dad. You understand that he's a football player and everybody loves it, and you enjoy watching him play as well. But just the whole thing that went into it, I'd have to say the lesson really began for me to understand who he was once I got on campus.
Yeah.
At the University of Pittsburgh.
And so you get to campus, and I'll tell you this, Pittsburgh was one of the schools that I even considered when I was going to school. But Anthony, I got to be honest, Maryland Terrapins, they swooped me away and stole me. But but talk about what it was like, that process of kind of finding yourself, separating yourself from your father's legacy, so people knew who you are, Anthony Dorsett.
the thing with being Anthony and not going by Tony was more so, and I think a lot of people honestly took it the wrong way initially. I was never trying to run from being Tony Dorsett Jr. or Anthony Drew Dorsett Jr., which is my dad's real name, Anthony. My dad never liked to go by Tony. The whole Tony thing started up as touchdown Tony for the Heisman, like Joe Theismann, and they do all these things for marketing and, you know, just everything else like that.
Yeah.
So for my dad, you know, talking to him, he would tell me all the time, like, hey, I love my name. I wish people would call me by my name. And so for me, it was one of those type of things, whereas I just never wanted to be called nothing but Anthony. You know, I know Tony is short for Anthony. I understand that. I'm not slow or you know, anything like that. But I just think that I like the name Anthony as well. I think it's a classy name. It's not a lot of guys have it. And that's what my mom named me. She didn't name me Tony.
I like that. Call you by the name your mama gave you, right? Like, don't anything else. I think that's great to touch on. And obviously, I mean, I know how you got into football, right? I mean, obviously with your father's legacy, but really talk about what made you grow up for the game. Because I know sometimes when I'm talking to, you know, children who have famous parents, right? They're sometimes turned off by what made their parents famous and kind of want to make their own name. So how did football become that sport for you that you just knew you wanted to make a career in?
For me, it started off actually as a kid, like growing up in my neighborhood. My dad, of course, was one of the most successful football players, but wasn't the only football player in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania. And you were surrounded by that. And just being in that area of Western Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, there's a lot of football that comes out of here. So I grew up in love with the game. I grew up on the University of Pitt campus.
Yeah.
You know, so I was in the locker rooms. I've been around it my whole life, you know. And so for me, it was just a natural progression for me just to fall in love with the game. It wasn't nothing that nobody had to put on me or anything else like that. You just, where I'm from, you grow up watching and playing ball, you know, and it's just one of those things. Whereas Aliquippa, Pennsylvania produces some of the best athletes out of one of the smallest towns in the United States. And I think it's just the way that we're bred to work and the pride that we have, and you know, just what you've seen come before you. You know, my dad, Mike Ditka, from that area, Ty Law, Darrell Revis. The names go on and on and on and on.
Yeah, just the legends and the icons. And so you take those talents to Pitt. You have a successful career at Pittsburgh. When you look back at your career at Pitt, what's kind of that memory that stands out the most to you?
Going in together with 25 guys. We had 25 guys going in as freshmen together. Curtis Martin, Hall of Famer, is one of the guys from my class too as well. I remember Kellen Winslow Sr. coming to talk to us when we were like freshmen or something like that. He had the whole team in the auditorium. Yeah. And they came in there with his Hall of Fame jacket on. And, you know, of course, I got my dad, and I grew up in the environment of being around athletes. And I just remember that man coming up in the locker room, and you got 100 dudes sitting in the locker room. He's telling everybody in the locker room that we would never be better than him. We would never accomplish the things that he accomplished. And there probably only 3 of us out of that room would make it to the NFL. So you got 100 dudes in the auditorium. You got somebody telling you that only 3 of y'all in this room are going to make it.
Yeah.
So I remember this day clear as, like, I can't even tell you. Me and Curtis were actually sitting next to each other in the meeting. And at that moment, we both started looking around the room for the third person because we knew we were 1 and 2. Yeah. But out of my class of 25 freshmen going in, I think 6 of us actually made it into the NFL. 5 or 6 of us from that one class. Yeah. So that was one of the times, one of the things I remember the most, and just overall just growing, you know, the grind of, you know, being at Pitt. While I was there, we had different coaches come in. The newspaper went on strike. I mean, we went through some things where we actually felt like we were some ragamuffins in college football. You know what I mean? Because it was just like, of course, if your local newspaper is not covering you and you're going through all these different coaching changes and the team was going up and down from time to time, it was definitely a grind at Pitt.
Yeah, I mean, just so much happening, and you get through all that adversity because you are Anthony Dorsett Jr. There's nothing that you can't handle, right? And then you go on to play in the NFL, right? Drafted in the 6th round, 1996 NFL draft by the Houston Oilers. Take me back to that moment. What was that like for you, finally making that dream come true?
I've shared this story a few times. I like, because don't too many people really ask like what you were doing at that time.
Yeah.
But actually, when the draft came on and I was actually drafted, I wasn't even watching the TV anymore. My grade was a 3rd to 6th round grade, so that meant I could be drafted anywhere from the 3rd to 6th round. It was a team that had like basically told me several days before that they were going to take me in the 3rd round, and so they didn't do it. And of course, I watched the draft that whole day and everything else. And literally, you go through a range of emotions, of course, And so when I actually was drafted, I think I was doing something in the yard.
Yeah.
And my cousin Ty Law called me. He rang the phone before the Oilers, before Jeff Fisher, before anybody called. He was like, "Yo, they just called your name," And I was like, "Really?" He was like, "Yo, I'm like, I'm outside right now." But of course, I went from that range of emotion, being like, "Oh, what's going to happen?" to an immediate high, So, and going back to one of those things we talked about earlier, like literally, I'm drafted in the 6th round in 7 rounds. Me and my dad, I was in Dallas when the draft went on, so of course we celebrate together. And
wait, you got to tell us, how did you guys celebrate?
We were actually, I think me and my dad, we just go eat, might have had a beer or something like that. We keep it simple, nothing big, you know what I mean? It was nothing crazy or nothing like that. Because you got to understand, like, and what I'm getting ready to go into is, I was drafted in the 6th round in 7 rounds. We were happy, the family's happy, friends are happy, school's happy, everybody's happy. But that dose of reality came, say, within the next 15 minutes from my dad, okay? And he was like, "Look, you're in there, but you're a 6th round draft pick. You got 1 foot in, 1 foot out. What you going to do?" And the reality of it was that I needed to hear that immediately anyway. I was that was on point, if I could say, better than anything that I had got up to that time. You know what I'm saying? Because it didn't allow you to slip. It didn't allow you to take for granted or think that you was comfortable in any kind of way.
So would you say, like, throughout your career, you kind of always felt like that underdog, Anthony, while you were playing in the National Football League?
No, I never felt like I was an underdog. I just never felt like I was, more so. And I've had teammates tell me this too as well. This before I ever recognized it. I was never always judged off of what I was doing. It was always measured to what my father had done or something else like that. And, so when you have a situation like that, of course, it can get a little bit, I guess you could say, frustrating at times, but it was something that I never really tried to pay attention to a lot of the outside noise or anything else like that, because there was so many people that was telling me that I wouldn't make it. And then there were so many people saying that the only reason I did make it is because my dad made it, so you have to just be able to tune everything out and keep it moving.
And I love how you said that you have to tune it all out, right? All the naysayers, all the negative energy. But how were you really able to do that? Because I know that still had to be hard, right? Because I think about players today, Anthony, and what they have to face on social media, right? So as much as you can, you want to tell them, like, tune it out, but it's always there. It's always there.
I think that more so than anything, like, my family, I grew up in a family that was a tight-knit family. Right. We love out loud, but then we're hard on each other, and expectations that we are putting on each other inside the family far more super exceed anything that you're going to deal with outside. But then we go hard on each other too as well. So, like, anything that you need to have happen is going to happen at home before it happens to you out in the street. Yeah. But for me, ask the question again. I'm sorry, I got a little bit off.
No, you're good. I just mean, like, how are you able to actually, like, tune out the naysayers, right? Because we say that, and it sounds so easy, right? Especially now, I can only imagine how hard it is for players who every time you get on your phone, you see like 36 negative, mentions of you. If you had a bad play now, what are we doing? We're replaying it, right? It's everywhere. So
it's never as bad as what they say it is, and you're never as good as what they say you are. And so one thing that I learned early on is don't even pay attention to the press. 9 times out of 10, those guys haven't played, and they're coming from that, I guess you could say, destructive criticism area instead of constructive criticism area. Right. And with that, you just have to honestly have faith. That what helped me more so than anything was my faith in God. Like, because when I wavered or when I felt weak or when anything was going on, like, I had to go in prayer and, like, really just go there. And so it was always, God always gave me a sign to let me know that, like, I wasn't thinking too much, I wasn't being too boastful, and that this was actually part of his plan. And so that being said, like, you know, my relationship with God helped me out. And, you know, just watching my dad maneuver through it for years, just being in the game. I don't ever remember him like picking up the paper, even caring about what people were saying. You know what I mean? And so just that and being in the environment that I was in, like I think I absorbed so much stuff without knowing I was doing it, just being around the guys.
Yeah, that's powerful.
You know?
And I think there's so much you can learn from that. Because then I want to ask you, what would your message be to guys playing today, right? Because there's even more negative news, like I touched on. The social media is there, you know, it's everywhere. You know, we just watched that Ravens-Browns game. Lamar can't get away from people thinking he went to go poop during that game and come back. I have to use that example, right? Because it's still a funny thing. But, you know, like what message would you give to them to try to tune people out now? Because it's everywhere, Anthony, right? Every time you turn on your phone, the TV, right? There's a critic probably criticizing you.
I mean, somebody's always going to have something to say, but what can you really do about that? You have to stay true to what you're doing, focus on what you're doing, ignore the social media, turn it off if you can. If I was a coach, you know, it would be one of those type of things where, like, I would literally try to tell guys, hey, limit your interaction. If it's not feeding you the right way, then don't pay attention to it. So, I mean, that would be one of the biggest things that I would tell guys, just to tune into the team and tune out all the social media stuff, especially the criticism of yourself. Don't buy into it.
Right.
Just stay true to you.
You got to protect your peace. That's what I'm always, you know, preaching. You got to protect your peace. I've always been naysayer, but like, if you're doing what you need to do, look, do you, be successful, and they'll continue to watch on. Well, let's get back to that career, right, with the Oilers, now known as the Titans. Take me back to that rookie year. What was that like for you, transitioning from college to the pros?
The transition was more of a mental transition than a physical transition.
Okay.
My rookie year, we probably ran one of the toughest defenses that was in the NFL at that time, which was the 46 defense that the Chicago Bears used to run. Yeah. And so literally off of one formation, you might have 5 different calls, defensive calls you can make off of one formation. So if you go into a game where a team is running, say, a gang of different formations throughout the course of the game, they might have 5 to 10 different formations. You got to understand how many calls you might have to understand for that game. Yeah. Like this. And then it was just a situation, whereas the mental side of it, more so than anything, just learning true leverage football, you know, the accountability that has to be there for you as a professional. There's college, you can get away with certain things. With the league, you're not getting away with it, you know. And so the transition was honestly to learn the business side of it.
Yeah.
You know, you're 21 years old. You're going in, you're a rookie. You got dudes that's been playing 15 years, might be 35 years old, got wife, kids, a whole different set of things on their head, and they're playing for a different reason outside of the love for the game. Is truly like they understand it's feeding the family.
Right.
So, you know, the maturity process has to come along quick, especially if you go to like a veteran team where their expectations of you once you come in the game is not to slack off regardless of how long you've been playing. So that transition has to come along pretty fast if you want to stay there.
It has to be quick. It has to be seamless. Like you said, and you have guys that are playing for their families, right? They don't just, they're both good, but they don't want to come and take the spot. And as we touch on that, was there anybody on that team that kind of took you under their wing and like nurtured you and mentored you?
You know, it was a couple of different guys. I learned from, I watched everybody, but I would learn from, you know, a few different guys. One of the guys right now, Lemansky Hall, who's actually one of the assistant coaches at University of Clemson. Yeah. Ski was always the guy that, as a young dude, would always hit me up and be like, yo, just control what you can control and only worry about that. Right. You know, because of course, in the realm of the locker room, the cafeteria, you got people reading the paper, buying into what people are saying about them or repeating what they're saying about other people.
Right.
And for me, you know, some people have to use that stuff as fuel to the fire for them. You know, that keeps the chip on the shoulder.
Right.
You know, that really didn't do nothing for me. So that was it. You know, Blaine Bishop was good for me. Scrappy. He was the dude that was the other side of it. He was the chip on the shoulder dude. Let me read it, you know what I'm saying, and let it motivate me to get it cracking. Chris Dishman, Joe Bowden, Steve McNair, like Marcus Robertson.
Yeah.
There were so many guys that when I got to that team, there was actually like a veteran team. Guys had been to the Pro Bowl, have been successful, and it was an easy place to learn. They taught me how to be a pro very fast. As far as getting to work on time, having accountability about what you were doing. I learned a lot in those first few years from the Oilers/Titans.
Yeah, you had to learn quickly. And you touched on the name, that kind of brings a little sadness back, right? Steve McNair, may rest in peace. And just, I don't want to take you back to that moment, but, when you heard that news, what was that like for you?
I couldn't believe it when I actually heard it. I started getting, of course, I got the information before it probably came across the news and, because guys were hitting me up from Nashville. And it was unbelievable. It's still unbelievable. I'm no detective or anything like that, but I've never thought that it actually happened the way that everybody said it did. But to see a guy like that who was just one of the most genuine, nice people that I knew, nice country boy for real, went out there and played his heart out, and it's one of those things that you never forget. I wish it never would have happened. I would love to still be able to talk to that boy, but and I'm sure his family and his kids would too as well. But yeah, that was a hard one. That was tough.
Yeah, it was tough. I appreciate you touching on that. Now to kind of switch tides, we're talking about rookie year. Something that usually happens to rookies, Anthony, are these little rookie pranks and jokes. So I'm wondering for you though, because of that last name, did you kind of get to bypass any of that, or were they tougher on you, Anthony?
I didn't actually get hazed a lot. Okay. But I did get.
You can share.
So I didn't even know this had happened. I did an interview, a newspaper article prior to me getting to camp. And the way the article was written, the guy made me come off like I was Deion Sanders coming out of college my first year, basically. And it was never intended like that at all. But of course, when the paper came out and you got the veteran wide receivers already on the team, and you got guys like, I remember one dude in particular, Willie Davis, because we just talked later on about stuff. And it was a point in time where they challenged me on a regular basis, rep after rep after rep, but it didn't do nothing but make me better. I thanked them for it. I didn't know what they were doing at the time. I didn't understand why they were so upset this was going on until years later, but it would be like days. We'd be at practice. They'd be like, everybody be calling me. I'm like, let's go. It didn't matter to me because anytime, I was one of those people, I like to practice.
Right.
Anytime you get a chance to get between those white lines and actually get better at what you're doing. So and I love to compete.
Yeah.
So calling me out was never something that I was going to shy away from.
Yeah, it's good to know that. Look, anything that anyone can handle, I know you of all people can. So it's good to know it wasn't that bad. And it's so funny, I'm sure, to find out later. Was that article it was that article?
Yeah, they were upset about that. I think the only thing I might have said in the article was that I wasn't afraid of anybody running by me or something like that. But of course, they took it as, oh, he ain't afraid of nobody or something. So yeah, they was lit when I got there.
I'm sure. They were like, all right, we got something for Anthony as soon as he comes through that door. And then as we continue to talk about playing with the Titans, 4 seasons with them, first Super Bowl appearance at 99, starting safety. What was that like? You got to take us back to that.
That was the Super Bowl. See, we didn't have a week off. So everything was such a blur.
Yeah.
All right. We went to Jacksonville. We played them 3 times that year. We beat them. I think we beat them 3 times that year, which is basically unheard of anywhere. And especially with them being in our division like that.
Yeah.
And I do remember Jeff told us before we left, Jeff Fisher told us before we left for Jacksonville, pack your bags for the Super Bowl. Because we literally going to come back home, drop stuff off, and get right back out of here. And that was, that's one of the few times that you don't have that week in between the game. So everything was accelerated. Atlanta froze.
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody remembers, but Atlanta got some ice and some snow that it had basically never got before. The city was totally different. And so it was a lot going on. Just getting family, only being in your 4th year of the league still. getting family in town, just understanding the whole thing. But the team made it a pretty easy process for us, and unfortunately, we didn't win that game. Unfortunately, but it was one of, like, from talking to everybody and everybody watching it, like, it was one of the most, I guess you would say, one of the better Super Bowl games that people had seen up until that point, And just talking to my friends, of course, after the game, I never knew that everybody, just the competitor in us, and we had beat the Rams that year on grass already at home.
Yeah.
We never thought in a million years that they was going to go in there and run up and down the field on us and put up a gang of points. And so when I'm talking to my boys after the game and years later and everybody telling me, like, oh, bro, we was thinking this, I'm like, what? Like, nah, man, it was way too much fighting in that team. Mm-hmm. That was one of the things about that Titan team. We were scrappy, for real.
And that's good to hear, because I think, we always hear about the winners of the Super Bowl, but, I think I've always wondered about what's that conversation like when you're on that other side. How do you use that to feed into your next year in football?
That was let me tell you, the duality of that, okay?
Yeah.
To be on one side of the field and you just had, like, your dream crushed, and to be able to watch the other people celebrating like you ain't got, like, you've never seen before. Like, it was it's a hard pill to swallow, just because you've lost the game and then now you actually see everything that's going on and how happy they are. But the city of Nashville, like the Raiders, and if anybody wants to challenge me on this, go ahead, but I think the Raiders probably got the most loyal fans that I've ever seen of any team.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that city did us that year in Tennessee, from people at every game, from meeting us at the airports, to just everything that was, to having a parade after we lost the game.
Yeah.
Well, I think like almost 500,000 people there, or something crazy. So, I mean, the city showed up for us. And that was actually like our first year really in the city as well. We moved into the stadium that year. Prior to that, we had been playing in Memphis. Where else did we play? We played at Vanderbilt. So just more so when we talk about the transition of getting into the NFL, the transition of that move was probably harder than the transition of trying to figure your way out through the league.
Yeah.
Going to games in the Astrodome that first year with like how the games are now. Like, the people stopped coming to the games because they knew the team was moving. So we might have 5,000 people in the Astrodome. I mean, you could hear everything that was going on, like any call that was being checked or anything else like that. You could hear everything. But yeah, the city of Nashville, they took to us, and it really helped us, through that wild card push that we had.
Yeah, that's special. And I think, sometimes fans don't get the love that they need, but it is a special part of the team. And while we're on that, obviously this year, again, 2020, unlike none other, how hard is it for you to watch those games, Anthony, and not see fans in those stands? Do you think that really impacts the players on the football field?
Honestly, I was never the type of person that I could be playing in the game and it'd be like halftime before I recognize how many people in the stands. So once you're playing, if you feed, like, the black hole was one thing, you feed into that. But a lot of times, you get caught up in just playing. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's totally different now, than it ever could have been, just being that quiet. But I don't think that it really would have bothered us. Once you put that helmet on and you see those other guys, and the week that is built up from just anticipation of playing somebody, you'll play them for 5 people there or 50,000 people there.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, right? Like you said, you have a game to put on. You want to
play.
Out, right? You want to give your best on that football field. And so let's take that fandom. We're going to talk about the Raiders. You joined the Raiders in 2000. But before we even get there, I want to talk with you, since we have a new Raiders team in Las Vegas now. Do you think that fandom is still like it was before, Anthony? Do you think we've bought on to them being in Las Vegas?
You have no choice. We don't have a choice. It is what it is now. They're definitely there, and they're going to be there. Yeah. I think that what I've seen is I've seen the transition. Of course, the fans are following. I see the Raider gear here in Dallas all the time. Yeah. So I don't think that there's been a lot of drop off as far as that goes. And I'm sure once people can actually get up in that stadium, Vegas being the destination that it is, and as long as the Raiders keep, being somewhat successful, I think it's going to be some cool stuff going on out there in Vegas.
Yeah, look, you're already smiling. You might have to tell us your plans that you have when you go back up there, Anthony.
I just can't wait to see the stadium.
Yeah.
They're doing some really cool stuff for all the alumni. All the alumni are actually getting a brick, so as you're walking into the stadium or as you're in the stadium, your name is out there forever. As a Raider, they say once a Raider, always a Raider. But no, just to actually get there, see the stadium, to see the eternal flame for Al Davis and all that kind of stuff. I can't wait for the opportunity.
It's going to be so special. And I want to keep talking Raiders, but I want to take a question from the fans. This is for you, Anthony, from Antoine. What do you reflect on most about your NFL career?
So many different things, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. More so than anything is just the relationships and the friends that I made. Games always pop up, like games is always going to be the thing. But one of the things that you take away from that, is the camaraderie, being in the locker room. Like that's one of the things that you miss the most about being away from the game, but standing out, I would honestly have to say,
you can pick a couple if you want.
Right, this is something funny. Okay, so this nobody knows it. So my rookie year, it was after a preseason game. I think it might have been like the last preseason game, and I actually fumbled the ball. On kickoff, and so I'm annoyed after the game. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get cut. I can't believe I made a mistake tonight. So I'm talking to my mom. I'm talking to my mom and the rest of my family out there, and I didn't see Jeff Fisher walking up. I didn't see Coach Fisher walking up at all.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I'm paranoid. I'm talking to my family, talking to my mom.
Yeah.
My mom sees Jeff Fisher, and she goes, "Hey, Jeff, are you going to cut Anthony because he fumbled the football?"
You asked him straight out.
Yo. I looked at, and I'm like, you can't do that. But of course, Jeff started cracking up because he thought it was funny too. But that was it's more so some behind the scene things that actually happen on trips and things like that. But yeah, and of course, on the field, any play that I've made sticks out. But the thing that I think about the most is not having 2 Super Bowl rings when I had the opportunity to have 2, of course. Being there and not getting it. Every year you watch the Super Bowls as they come on, they're replayed every year. Yeah. Every year you go through that same heartbreak and knowing what happened. So,
I'm sure. But look, still a great career that you had. And I've seen your Twitter page and talking about, I know you didn't get those 2 rings, but we've seen some of those highlights you've been reposting, Anthony, on the Twitter page. Let's talk about that. I know you shared picking off Peyton Manning. 6. And
yeah.
What was that like? You got to take us back to that moment because you don't get to pick off Peyton Manning every day. I know that.
Not a lot of people. I think my cousin Ty Law actually got the most career interceptions against Peyton Manning and everything else like that. But we keep it in the family, so I got one too. But it was just I remember that game because the tight end Marcus Pollard, they were trying to split him out, trying to use him in the flex, and it was just one of those situations. Whereas I think a few times, literally, I was in position to make plays, but my technique wasn't always good or whatever. But we had been talking about what they were doing in that position, and so it was me and Elijah Alexander, I believe. May rest in peace, Eli Alexander used to play with the Raiders. But it was I was just telling him, I'm like, look, I'm coming down. I have that guy, and man, I was like, I just need you to give me a second to stay there, just stay inside for a second. And we got it to happen. And I mean, it worked out exactly like we thought it would, of course. And, Peyton threw the ball. And as you hear the commentator or whoever it was say, the ball hit me right in my chest, whatever. It was 6 going the other way. And we actually won that game that night. So yeah, that was a good feeling. And to go into the RCA Dome and to beat Peyton Manning. Of course, anytime as a defensive back, you get your hands on the ball, you want to do something with it. So getting your hands on the ball is big in the first place, but then turning into 6 is extra big.
Nothing better than that, I'm sure. I mean, just lots of great memories. I know, we're talking about The Raiders, in Oakland, you and the Raiders won the AFC Championship game, right? Talk about that Super Bowl experience, but take me back to the AFC Championship. What was that moment like for you? You talk about what happened in Tennessee, with the Oilers Titans, and then to go to the Raiders and do this. I mean, you just been around successful teams, Anthony, and I think you were that secret sauce and ingredient, right?
You know what was crazy is, okay, so when I was with the Titans, and of course they're building the team, and you're a part of the team. You see the structure, and you recognize the names and everything else like that. When I was in my free agent year and I was visiting teams, being that I had just come from a Super Bowl contender, you look at the team, you can basically say to yourself, okay, if I got these certain pieces that mimic these pieces that were over there, you can see where the success will be. And so that year when I was a free agent, I visited several teams, maybe like 5-6 teams. And as I'm looking at the structure of the teams, me being a safety, of course, I'm like, okay, if we got one good DB, one good corner, you could always roll the defense. And like, if you could find somebody who could apply pressure like the Freak and the rest of our D-line was doing in Tennessee. And of course, like the Raiders had Darrell Russell, who they had just drafted D tackle that was crazy. They had Lance Johnson. I mean, the team basically, as I went piece by piece from offense to defense, it lined up with what we were doing in Tennessee. No other team that I visited, could I say that about.
Right.
So in the thought process of it, like I'm chasing the Super Bowl again. Yeah. So like what team is actually going to get into the playoffs and how is that going to work? And so that's literally what ended up, making me choose the Raiders more so than anything. Like I saw that we could have some success. What's up, baby boy?
Tell him if he wants to say hi. You can come on camera and say hi.
Say hi. Okay, come here and say hi real quick. So
there he is.
That's Little Hawk.
How are you?
Good.
Welcome to the show. We're talking to your dad. I see the haircut. I heard you guys on the phone earlier. I love the haircut.
Thank you.
And polite. Appreciate you coming on to say hi. Your dad's doing a great job too, by the way, with the interview.
Okay, buddy. I'll be back out there. Don't worry about that.
This piece fell off my chair.
Okay.
When I was going to sit
down. Oh, such a polite young man. So you're doing a great job, Anthony.
Thank you.
I know we were talking about the Raiders, and I appreciate you touching on just all of those great memories. Like you said, to be able to go to a team, be a Super Bowl contender again. I mean, a lot of guys get that experience, yet alone twice. And then I know that has to still be special for you. I know, like you said, it hurt to not get the rings, but still to be able to get there twice again. And I've covered Super Bowl. I know what a magnificent experience it is. And I'm sure to this day, it probably holds a special place in your heart.
Oh, definitely. And then, of course, my grandmother, my mom's mom, my grandmother's like 86 now.
Wow.
And she had the opportunity to go to both Super Bowls.
Wonderful.
And to this day, she says that the Super Bowl with the Raiders was the best treatment she's ever had in her entire life.
Oh,
so when you hear stuff like that and your family gets to share in it, like, it means so much more to you. They actually, that whole, and then that week we had that extra week, in San Diego, and it was La Jolla. So, people had a chance to see some good weather, of course, coming from the East Coast, and then just experience some good treatment, like we said.
Yeah, nothing wrong with good treatment. And like we're talking about football, Antoine wants to ask you another question. This is something interesting. I don't know if you've been asked this yet, but would you ever like to coach in the NFL?
Not till my son is like done doing what he's doing or something like that. The hours that are involved in coaching, they're actually more involved in hours with coaching than there are as a player. Typically, the coaches are there when you get there and they're there when you leave. Yeah. And so that being said, like if your kids are involved in any type of extracurricular activities, a lot of times you're missing that stuff and anything else like that. So it would honestly be hard because that's my only kid. And I want to see as much and be a part of as much as I can. So my goal is to honestly to get back into radio and TV and to use this communications degree and show my son something else. He's already in love with football and sports. Yeah. But I think it would be a benefit for him to actually be able to see me do something different at the same time and give him more options.
Yeah, look, there's always life after football. As much as I know many of you guys want to play forever, like age is something that you can't get away from, right? And your body will start to tell you, like, well, Anthony, I don't know if we're going to be able to go out there another season. But, and I think setting that example for your son is so important. And I want to talk life after football. But before we get there, since you do have a son, I'm curious your thoughts. There's a lot of conversation about, when should you start playing tackle football, right? And there's some essays later on, the CTE issue and things like that. I'm just wondering where you stand as a father.
Well, for me with it, in my family, my dad didn't actually start playing tackle football till he was 12. Mm-hmm. And so with that being said, then I wasn't allowed to start playing contact sports until I was 12. Okay. I think that more so with science is shown it can be one hit, or of course it can be an accumulation of hits over time and everything else like that. Right. So for me, I always, in our family, it's going to be the same thing for my son. Probably he won't start playing, any type of contact sports until he's at least 12, 13 years old. I just think that it's better for parents just to wait. I mean, your kids can be so much more skilled in fundamentals of football when they're playing flag and they're actually learning how to move and use your hips and everything else like that. And 7-on-7 now is taking it to another level where that's basically like AAU football for kids now, like they got AAU basketball. So, the game is in a place where they're actually trying to protect guys a whole lot more than they ever had. And I think as parents and as coaches and as, people who can actually help these kids, we got to put them in the right positions. So regardless if they want to play at that early age, you got to be smart. You got to be smart. Like this education and this information is not out there now simply for you not to use it.
Exactly. Like it's out there. And if you have kids, set the example. You got to set the example. Again, we just want it to be safe. We love football, but we want it to be as safe as possible. And Anthony, now let's go back to life after football, right? You played that last season in the NFL. First off, when did you just know it was time for you to hang it up? Like, when did you just know I'm not going to step back out?
My situation, it really wasn't like that in the beginning. Like I had like some agent stuff going on. And of course I was going into my 9th year. So my minimum was high. And, I was talking to different teams and just a number of different things was going on. When you're in the process of that and you've been in the game, you actually don't think that it's going to turn out the way that it did, but one thing led to another. Like I ended up not signing with anyone. I still got calls from teams for years, just asking me was I in shape and everything else like that. And then after a few years is where you start to see, the stuff with Toronto or Omaha and things like that, where I was actually more or less at that point in time trying to find an opportunity. I didn't think I was done playing. I didn't want to be done playing. And I just wanted the opportunity to actually try to, more or less use those leagues to actually get back to the NFL if possible.
Yeah.
But once you go to the NFL and you play in that league and you understand that it is the league of all leagues when it comes to football, right. And you get spoiled, needless to say. So transitioning into the UFL or into Canada, it really wasn't what I expected it to be at all.
Yeah, it was different. I'm sure, like you said, once you get to that top level, nothing else is kind of going to compare to it, right? But you tried it, you did it. But the great thing about it is, there's still life after football. And you went on to do a lot of cool things. I feel like you're so humble about it. You starred as a character in Shane and the independent film Losing Faith. You talked about, doing TV and sports and radio, Anthony. That's some great stuff. It's not easy. I think, sometimes we make it look easy. But, from going from the field to on the broadcast side, I'm sure that transition took time, right? But also I feel like you're just a natural from just talking with you. So when you after football, using that communications degree, what was that like?
The TV thing happened like I was in a party, shaking hands, shaking hands, meeting people, and didn't know that the people that I was actually talking to were people from BET. And the next thing you know, since I hadn't signed with the team, they called up my publicist at the time, Eunice Elliott, and they started talking to her about possibly using me as a host for a show called Mad Sports that they used to have on. Yeah. A comedian named Joe Claire and a few other guys used to host it prior to I did. Yeah. Literally, it went from that to them sending the camera crew to me doing my first show.
Wow.
It was no training involved. There was nothing else to it. And I heard Jamel Hill say one time, because they were talking about like her transition from being a journalist to going to TV. And they just asked her, like, were you ever afraid of it? And she was like, nah, she was like, I actually think the ignorance that I had in going into it saved me in a lot of places. So I think that was my benefit as well. I just thought that, I always knew going in the pit, and anybody that knew me would tell you that I said the same thing all the time. I was going to play ball and I was going to do TV. And by the grace of God, I manifested it.
Yeah, you spoke it into existence. Nothing like that, because you also hosted the Dorsett Daily with Anthony and Kip, which was a weekly radio show, right? On One Radio. What was that experience like? I see the smiles. It was a great experience. Can you still hear me okay?
I don't know what's going on. We're getting some bad reception. I'm having a hard time understanding you.
No worries. Like, it's live. Take you off. Bring you back on. Can you hear us, Anthony? All right, guys. Sorry, we're having a little technical difficulties. Anthony, can you hear me?
What do we need to do?
All right, I'm going to take you off. All right, guys. Thank you for bearing with me. Anthony Dorsett Jr. here, former NFL player, doing so much more now. He's talking about his TV and radio career. Anthony, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, Anthony? All right, guys. So sorry, but like technology. I can see him. We can see him. We just can't hear him.
I can see you. You're frozen though, and all the words are coming through like really chopped up.
Oh man, just when things were getting better, I'm gonna chat you, Anthony. So can you talk about your radio show? All right. I want to make this work. All right, Anthony, I just sent you a message. I don't know if you can hear me, but hopefully he can still tell us about his radio show because, again, Anthony Dorsett Jr., former NFL player, into fitness, coaching, and so much more. Successful TV host, successful radio host, and so much more. Anthony, can you hear us now?
Yes, ma'am. I got you now.
There we go. See, technology. Look, we worked through it just like the football game, right? We have to find the end goals. Let's talk about that radio show that you had.
Oh, so which one, in Nashville or in Oakland?
See, that's how you know you're successful. You have to think about which one. Let's talk about the Dorsett Daily.
Oh, so that was actually a show concept that was actually that was more so something that me and a friend of mine had created to just like it was. I guess you would say it was more so like a podcast at the time than anything. Mm-hmm. I've actually done radio shows in Dallas with that show that you mentioned. That was more so like our own creation. When I played for the Titans, I had a radio show that we had a live show where guys would come in, and then we'd also have a live audience. Wow. And then when I was with the Raiders, I also did a show out in the Bay, which is more or less like a call-in show. Yeah. I think, one of the things is I love radio. You could do so much with it. And, like it's one of those platforms that, of course, now with everything, there's a camera and video going to it as well. But it's definitely a more laid back atmosphere when you're in the radio studio than, of course, you're in front of the camera and everything else like that.
You can be more lax and more chill. I'm like, when I do radio, it's different. It's much more. Be the best you, right? Be your best self. In addition to radio and TV, you're obviously not shy in front of the cameras. And Anthony, we've seen those pictures. I know you're a fitness expert. You're not one that's afraid to just do this and take the shirt off. So talk about just your fitness journey.
My fitness journey, it would probably trip you out. Growing up, I was always thin. I never really lifted weights or did anything like that. I graduated high school. I was about 165 pounds when I went to Pitt. And that was like the first time that I actually got on the weight program. Wow. And more or less than anything, I went from being the slim kid to the muscular kid in about a year, literally. 165 when I got to Pitt. By the time spring ball rolled around, I was 185. I got redshirted my freshman year. So I took everything serious, from the weight room to the field and practice and everything else like that. And it was never a thing where I was trying to work out to look a certain kind of way. I was honestly working out to protect myself from getting hurt on the field because, like, at 165 pounds, you're a small DB.
Right.
So the whole process was, of course, just to build a body that could withstand any type of injury and everything else like that. And fortunately, it turned out to look like something. But I've always been the type of guy. I've never been the dude to show off my body or do anything like that. I was, of course, being called thin, and then going from one thing from thin to muscular. I went from being too skinny to, am I doing steroids, or is this going on? Is that going on? So, like I actually went through some body shaming for years. I think I probably still suffer from some of it, but, because it was just one of those type of things, whereas you get teased, like I said, and then the next thing you're getting teased for looking a different way now. So, you go from like, well, I wasn't good then, and now y'all talking about me now. Like, so what is it? And but my mom has always been my biggest fan in that area. Yeah.
She wasn't like, oh, put a shirt on, right? She didn't do that.
No, my mom is like, show that body while you got it. You know what I mean? So she's that lady. So literally, like I was able to do a fitness magazine several years ago.
Yeah.
And I did a calendar. Those are all things that were more so the creation of like friends and my mom and stuff like that. Like I'm not the type of guy that sits around and pop my collar and be like, oh, I gotta take these pictures and show it. No, that's not me. That's not me.
Right. That's just not who you are. And I'm so happy on that. Anthony, I can't believe how quickly this hour has went, but I can't, let you off the show without talking a little bit about current football. So we're getting closer to that playoff prediction. Any predictions about who might get to Tampa?
Well, of course, you got the stronger teams right now that, Kansas City is on the road. They're doing what they're doing. They're going to be hard to beat just because of the experience that they have. And Patrick Mahomes is an unbelievable player. Pittsburgh is looking good. They've lost a few here back to back, but they're still looking strong. The NFC East is a toss up. No team is actually good, but you can't tell who's going to come out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm thinking it may be Kansas City back in there.
Okay.
And
you have them repeating? Oops, I think we lost Anthony.
The Rams are playing.
Okay.
But yeah, and of course, for me, I want to see one of my teams get in there. I would love to see the Titans or the Raiders have some playoff expectations and try to get a chance to get up in there, because once
I have Anthony going in and out, but I want to hear him talk about his old team, the Tennessee Titans, because what they're doing, and of course Derrick Henry in the year that they've had, but we might have lost him. But nonetheless, thank you so much for Anthony Dorsett Jr. for joining me here on Listen In With KNN. Appreciate his time. We lost him. He might come back on, but nonetheless, again, great show. We'll be back this Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern time, with another former football player. Not even going to give his name, because you need to go on my page or follow Fox Sports Radio to go see who will be joining me next. But again, a special, special, special thanks for Anthony Dorsett Jr. for giving me his time and his patience and getting us ready for Thursday Night Football. Of course, I know we have a big game coming up. The one thing I'm sad I didn't get a chance to ask him, I wanted to ask him his top 5 safeties playing in today's game. So we might have to have him back on one day to give us those picks. But as always, thank you so much for everyone's support. A special, special thank you to my team. Again, back 2 p.m. Saturday. And also check out the audio version of the show. We've had a lot of great guests on this week. Mark Bethea, Glenn Concert, Chantel Smith-Jones is coming up. Is coming up. So just a lot of great things. Listen In With KNN. You don't want to miss it. And again, Anthony, I'm so sorry we lost you, but look, it's technology. I appreciate everyone bearing with us, and I'll see you guys Saturday at 2 p.m. Have a great one. Bye, guys. And enjoy Thursday Night Football.
Follow Kelsey on social media at @TheRealKNelson. Catch episodes of Listen In With KNN on YouTube, on air at AM 1340 and 96.9 FM Fox Sports Radio, on Facebook and Twitter, and online at KelseyNicoleNelson.com. Thank you for watching this live stream broadcast of Listen In With KNN.
You used to hear me on your airwaves or hear me on my hit podcast, but now I'm taking you to the screen. You'll love Elevator Thoughts. We will talk the latest trending in sports. It's game time. What better way to get to know those that visit the show than over some good food and drink? It's time for confessions.